is how it bees. The system works against us, has you down, screaming out, please. You're just a... Oh, geez. Like, we are gang members. Get it? I like to say no, please. Jeez. Oh, geez. All right. I have so many different things that I want to look into. I end up, almost distracted myself because there's just so much worth looking into. But let's continue our discussion on Anno Domini. Anno Domini. Anno Domini. Let's hear.
Anno Domini.
Anno Domini. I was right, you dumb bitch. I was kind of right. It's Domini. I thought it was Domini, but Domini. She was wrong. Karen, you were wrong. All right, let's see. We'll go to Dionysus, Exegeus. And we'll go to his Easter tables. I want to know, I mean, for those kind of confused, understand that what, you think it's 2025 AD for a reason. And it's not because it's been, 2025 years since zero. That's not the case. And people just don't understand that. And when you realize just how, I don't even know the word to use, like confusing, wonky. I'm not really sure the right word to use, but when you're talking about our historical account, to assume it's accurate is just foolish. I really, that's the right word with that. It's foolish. And if you just if you just, scaled it down and made it a more reasonable thing, there's no example that works the same way that you'd be like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. The fact that in what he decided, 525. Well, here, I guess we could read because the opening part of the Dionysus thing isn't that long. And again, most of this is about him being Scythian, Scythia Minor. So he lived from 470 to 544. Scythia Minor. Dionysus is best known as the inventor of Anno Domini. Anno Domini. Dating, which is used to number the years of both the Gregorian calendar and the Christianized I'm sorry, Christianized Julian calendar. That's changed. That's been added since I looked at it. Almost all churches adopted as computists for the dates of Easter. From around the year 500 until his death, Dionysius lived in Rome. He translated 401 church canons from Greek into Latin, including the apostolic canons. Wait. He turned them from Greek to Latin? I thought Latin was the older one. I mean, this whole idea of him, he translated the different works from Greek to Latin. How? How did that work out? Like, I'd love to picture the logistics of it. Just okay, so Dionysus wakes up in his little shitty house with a thatch roof and, you know, sleeping on hay, no electricity, no toilet paper, nothing like that. Gets on his horse, rides his horse into town where there's huge, monolithic buildings, big pillars, all this crazy architecture that's still around today. He parks his horse at the horse car park, or at the horse parking lot, where I guess it gets its 10 gallons per day 10 gallons of water per day while it's waiting for him to finish doing his work for the day. Every day I see you, I'm glad you're homeless. Like, this is, again, somebody is really mad at me for talking about the way, the date. How dare you talk about the date? Can you imagine what would, inspire somebody in this regard? I mean, granted, we know that my videos are all about oh, look, perfectly flat. Look at that cloud, perfectly square. We know my videos are all about how we should kill pedos and eliminate the J control scheme and stop the genocide and all that stuff. But I'm not even talking about that. And yet this guy is here today and he's mad. It's not his first day here. He's mad. Are you talking about the date? It's BC and AD. It's before Christ and after death, God damn it. That's all it is. I don't like when you talk about things I don't understand. Anyway, had great authority in these collections canonym Dionysia had great authority in the West, and they continue to guide church administrations. This is 1,500 years ago. Dionysius also wrote a treatise on elementary mathematics. The author of a continuation of Dionysius' Computus, writing in 616, not 615, not 617, 616, described Dionysius as a most learned abbot of the city of Rome, and a venerable Bede, and the venerable Bede accorded him the honorific abbess, which could be applied to any monk, especially a senior and respected monk, and does not necessarily imply that Dionysius ever headed a monastery. Indeed, Dionysius' friend Cassiodorus stated in his Institutionis that he was still an ordinary monk late in life. Not only do we have the Dionysius writings, we also have writings of his friend who wrote about him. I just I always think this shit is so interesting. And I just wonder, how is it you believe it? What about this do you just accept and go, yep, that's just how it is? Stupid mosquito. All right. Where Origins. No, see, okay, so then it goes into his origins. Like, look at this shit. Look at the details in his origins. Look at how much it is. It's literally all about whether he was Scythian or not, like the legitimacy of it. Dionysus is included as Goths and Greeks and Latin sources. Vitalian is sometimes spelled with the same ambiguous Scythia. Like, it's all about the Scythia stuff. It's like, what a strange. His origins are nothing about him, and nothing about, you know. It's just one long thing on whether or not he's Scythian. Well, by the end of it, I guess it's safe to say he is. So he's best known, Dionysus is best known as the inventor of Anno Domini, which is used to number the years of both the Gregorian calendar and the Julian calendar. Again, like, it's crazy how significant all of this is, and yet, you know, the average person knows nothing about it. You literally use this shit every day of your life. You know, every day that you write out the date, you look at what date it is, whatever, you're influenced by this shit. And yet you know nothing about it. You know, I'd say like 50% of us probably have heard about the Julian calendar versus the Gregorian calendar, but you know nothing about it. You don't know why it is what it is. And when you actually understand what it is, you know, when you, like, the whole idea of the Gregorian calendar and the Julian calendar, to think that this is the narrative, that in 1582, think about what you think 1582 looks like. (1582), they, whoever they is, figured out that what we consider the length of a year, that we had decided that it was 365.25 days long. Each year is 365.25 days long. In 1582, they realized they messed up. And it's actually 365.2452, something like that. Basically, it works out that our calendar is off by a little less than 1 day every 100 years. I mean, we're talking about like minutes per day. They figured out, oh, you know what? I think we actually said the days are about 5 minutes too long. So they figured this out in 1562. And it was such an important thing. They had to rework the calendars and all this other shit. Like, it wouldn't even fucking matter. You know, it really doesn't matter even a little bit. Like, if you were to go back and be like, you know, I know you think that thing happened 1473 on August 17th, but the reality is, and this is going to blow your mind, it was actually August 21st. Yeah. August 21st. You thought it was August 7th. I mean, isn't your whole world going to change? Isn't your whole perception on everything going to change because the thing that you thought happened a couple days later according to whatever calendar they just decided to switch to? Like, it's such a strange concept. You know, I am going to start looking into birds more. It's weird that you guys are so determined to make that like to squash that conversation before it happens. You know, it's you're trying to provide a solar system to people before they start asking, where do we live? So then they go, oh yeah, we live in a solar system. Like, you're trying to debunk, or not even debunk, but discredit the idea long before anybody's even making it, which is really one of those things that people should be pointing to. And if you're stupid enough to think like our system is bragging about creating fake mosquitoes, fake bees, you know, all sorts of fake insects and shit. The idea of birds not being what you think they are, like, that's not that far-fetched. It's really a really easy thing to grasp. Everybody knows that we're capable of that technology. We are. So, like, to think that a much more advanced version of us isn't, or wouldn't be, that's strange. Oh, I want to go check out that cemetery today. But again, you know, that's a different topic for a different day. He used it to identify the several Easters in his table, but did not use it to date any historical event. This is such a weird narrative. When he devised his table, Julian calendars were identified by naming the consuls who held office that year. He himself stated that the present year was the consulship of Probus Jr., which he also stated was 525 years since, quote, since the incarnation of our Lord Jesus Christ, which is weird too, because it's like, you're not saying he was born, you're saying the creation of this narrative, basically. You're acknowledging that it's the creation of a narrative. How he arrived at this number is unknown, but there is evidence of the system that he applied. He invented a new system of numbering years to replace the Diocletian years that had been used in the old Easter table, because he did not wish to continue the memory of a tyrant who persecuted Christians. Yeah. Apparently Diocletian persecuted Christians. Let's see. Roman Empire, Diocletian, nicknamed Jovis, was Roman Empire from 284 until his abdication in 305. He was born Diocles, or I guess, Diocles, Diocles, to a family of low status in the Roman province of Dalmatia. Remember, this is the history of a guy who lived from 242 to 312, I assume. I'm not really sure. It says 242/245 to 311/312. So we don't really know when this guy was alive. We don't know when he was born or when he died, but we do know that his family was of low status in Dalmatia. As with other Illyrian soldiers of the period, Diocles rose through the ranks of the military early in his career, serving under Aurelian and Probus, and eventually becoming a cavalry commander for the army of Emperor Carus. I just, whenever we start talking about these kind of bullshits, right? Like, you know, it shows you, if you allow it, it shows you just how stupid you are. It shows you just how manipulated you are, because you don't ever give it any thought. You know, you hear about Napoleon marching his 300,000 soldiers, blah, blah, blah. Morning. You hear about Napoleon marching his 300,000 soldiers this way or that way. You hear about, you know, Civil War bullshit where 100,000 troops this way and that way. And Civil War is even much more recent. I'm talking about, you know, I mean, just throughout the entire narrative, we're told these huge armies led by these characters that they give us. But no one ever says, well, how did you feed 300,000 people on a march? You know, where did they sleep? How did you arm them? How did you clothe them? You know, did they have special clothing on? Like, I did want to look into suits of armor, because suits of armor just really, again, they just don't make sense. You know, how they were created, how they were put together, how people even used them. They had to be heavy as fuck. And granted, there are things nowadays, there's like a UFC where people put on armor in battle. It's really weird, right? But it's not the same kind of armor that we're talking about. This is much more loose. This is much more, there's much more, openings and weaknesses and all that. But nobody ever talks about that. To feed 300,000 troops, what would you use? You know, even if you were like, they hunted as they went. How many animals would it take to feed 300,000 people? How many cooks would you need? How many fires would you need to be able to cook said food? 300,000 people is something that most of us can't really even fathom. You know, you'll see shit where they'll tell you that's like 1 million people there or something, and it's like, holy shit, but you can't really grasp all of it. But you hear these stories throughout all of antiquity, where these large groups of warriors, they come and they travel. Like, when you're talking about the Bible especially, but any sort of historic narrative, they talk about travel like it was no big deal. Like, they went from this place to that place, they did this, they did the origins of Zionism. The first Zionist council held in 1894, I believe. I read that, if I'm remembering correctly. I think it was 1894. Was held in Switzerland, or was held in Basel, Switzerland. And you supposedly 208 delegates from 17 countries came to this building in Switzerland to have their Zionist council, their first Zionist council. The logistics of that, just, what do you think 1894 looked like? How easy was travel back in 1894? just facilitating, coordinating the event to begin with. Somebody who doesn't live in Basel, Herzl, decides to, by the way, if you're watching, like, share, and sub. Don't forget to do that thing. Like, share, and sub, it really helps. But Herzl picks out a building somehow, works out the negotiations for said building, for said weekend, or whatever it was. Then sends out messages to 208 plus different delegates from all over the world, 17 different countries. So he sends those out. They then RSVP. He then lets the host building know in Basel, this is how many people are going to be there. All these people, what? Like, how many months does it take them to get to Basel, Switzerland back then? Climbing through mountains and shit like that. Other than airships were a lot more common than we think they are, I don't really know how you facilitate that. 17 different countries. I don't know what the 17 different countries are. I'm assuming one of them is the United States. You know, they probably had an Australian delegate as well. This is when they're trying to figure out whether they're going to make Uganda the proximity Palestine until they can take over Palestine. Like, people just don't, your ignorance is not my fault. It's so weird that because I'm talking about things that most people don't understand or have no knowledge of whatsoever, even though it's easily found, it's right there. I don't use any conspiracy theory stuff. But you know nothing about this. And instead of you admitting you know nothing and maybe asking questions or trying to gain some knowledge or looking into it, it's like you're a little kid who feels left out. So because you're left out, you're gonna like try to disrupt. It's not, you guys aren't paying attention to me. It's not all about me, so I'm gonna be a bastard. For the millions of videos. Yep. Millions. But even still, you have to ask yourself, like, starting this process, you would have never convinced me that submarines, that there are so many submarine enthusiasts out there. But apparently there are. Apparently there are a lot of people who not only believe in submarines, but are mad at me for questioning things. And doesn't matter what's being talked about, whether it's some big picture kind of shit like Israel, genocide, pedophilia, history, all these kinds of things. They don't want to talk about any of that stuff. No. What they want to talk about is submarines. Really fucking interesting. And the thing is, if I were to start talking about submarines, they would fall apart because they don't know shit about submarines either. You know nothing about submarines. Cornelius Drebbel should be the real Ben Franklin. The way we look at Ben Franklin, we should look at Cornelius Drebbel as being better than Ben Franklin. And none of you even know who Cornelius Drebbel is. This dude was said to be able to make it lightning and thunder on command. This is the guy that invented the first submarine in 1620. You believe in submarines in 1620? I mean, you might as well. Again, they were capable of figuring out that they were about 5 minutes, that the historical calculations and that the day that we are, that we live in, that the system they were using was off by a little less than a day every 100 years. They figured that out. So fucking A, submarine seems like that would be like, we're talking about astronomical, like, long period. Like, how would anybody even be able to study that shit? Most people didn't live to be 100 years old, let alone, you're in your 20s at the start of the 100 years, so you're like an adult. It's one thing to say, well, I'm 100 years old. Well, that first 10 years is just a blur because you were just a dumb kid to begin with. And probably longer than that, actually. After his death, Carus and his son Numeria, his name is Numerian. He's a numbers guy, his name is Numerian. On a campaign in Persia, Diocles was proclaimed emperor by the troops, taking the name Diocletianus. Diocletianus. The title was also claimed by Carus's surviving son, Carinus, but Diocletian defeated him in the Battle of the Margus. The Battle of the Margus, let's see. Was fought in July 285 for the control of the Roman Empire between the armies of Diocletian and Carus in the valley of the Margus River, today Great Morava, in Moesia, present-day Serbia. Probably, I love when they throw these in there, probably near the settlement of Margum. The battle proved to be the tipping point that led to the eventual resolution of the crisis of the 3rd century and the return of stability to the empire. Dun, dun, dun. Carus led the larger force, but the loyalty of his army was questionable. Carinus had allegedly alienated men who supported his success, alienated men who support his success depended on, including mistreating the Senate and its womenfolk, and seducing the wives of his officers. Yeah, we know all this from 285. Yep, 285, someone was like, that damn Diocletian, Diocletian, whatever his name is. Like this is just so strange, right? This is the stuff in history that I don't. It's weird because, like, when you're a kid and you're forced to learn this kind of shit, you learn it like you learn it as necessary, right? It like gets put into this temporary folder. You have it in your head for the test, and then once you do your test, it just leaves. Or it gets put back into this other folder that gets way covered up with shit and it's hard to recall things from. But like, you do it because you have to. You know, there's always something to be said about something, you know, done from force compared to something done out of a labor of love. And you can usually tell when somebody isn't putting their all into it or isn't happy. You know, even when it comes to like food and shit. You know, food tastes better when the chef is loves what he does. Or he's, you know, comparatively, you know, if he's having a terrible day, he's not going to cook as well as he normally does. But to think that like, you know, all these people are doing all these things, and it's being kept track of and all this other shit. Like, it's just, I forgot the point I was making. I'm trying to restart my brain here. I don't know what the hell made me go up, but anyway, let's see here. The idea that his success was defended, blah, 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 blah. The exact circumstances of the battle are uncertain, but it is known that Carinus was killed in the course of the battle, most probably by one of his own officers. Right. Like, this is just such bullshit. It's so ridiculous to think that you know, these narratives are true. They sound like works of fiction. Oh, that's what I was saying. So when you're forced into learning something, you just learn it to regurgitate it, especially in a school scenario where you're not supposed to be asking questions. The teacher doesn't want you picking apart the narrative that he's giving or she's giving, making them look stupid. They don't want that. As a matter of fact, you get in trouble for that shit. You start asking too many questions and you get in trouble. You know? The ego comes through, the arrogant ego. I'm a huge proponent of ego. I think everybody should be, you know, very strong in their ego. You should absolutely have a very strong ego. You should know what you do well, what you do better than most, and be proud of yourself. And you know, no shame whatsoever in knowing that you're good at stuff. That's crazy. But like I say, when you're forced into learning it, it's just temporary. To me, it's so interesting to go back to this as an adult who wants to look at it. Like, I'm sure I learned about Anno Domini at some point in school. I don't remember it, but I'm sure I learned enough to pass whatever the test was. And I knew I didn't think it was after death. I knew it was something, but I didn't know what it was. But even that, I mean, I'm sure most history teachers have told their students that Anno Domini, after death, is Anno Domini. Or Domini, or whatever. Domini. Domini. I don't know. Can't remember what it says. You know, most most of us had that lesson. We just forgot it and believe that AD is still after death. But to go into the history now as an adult who's critical, who doesn't have to regurgitate it to get my paycheck, right? Your paycheck is your grades. You want to be able to go out and play. You want to have your TV. You don't want your shit taken away. You know, that's your paycheck. It's the same thing. In order to get your paycheck, you're required to regurgitate the narrative as it is. You know, the student who regurgitates it the most is the one that's, you know, the post and the student. Look at the diorama that they make that looks exactly like I say it's supposed to look. Not like guy over here who keeps asking questions I don't like. And I did this in school. I ask questions like this all the time. And you know, maybe I had a sarcastic, smart-ass tone when I was asking them because of the situation I was in. But I was always asking questions that the teachers didn't necessarily like. Like one time we were going over like World War II and shit, and we were reading the letters that, you know, some of the soldiers, they died on the battlefield, and they had a little pen and paper, a little pencil and paper that they would pull out, and they would write one last letter to their loved one. My dearest Begonia, I am forlorn to inform you that I shall no longer see your shining face like the sunset on the dew of the morning, evening, you know, blah, 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 you know, just the most poetic shit. All of these fucking hillbilly nothing, these hillbilly mountain folk, you know, no school, nothing. They can all read and write eloquent fucking, you know, poetry to their loved one while they're dying. And it gets to the point where and it's like, and my time is short. I just wish to see your face again, for I love you so much. And then the line, like he even writes that up. And I remember asking my teacher about that. Like, how the hell do we even have little notes that these, what do you mean these guys wrote it as they were dying? My teacher told me, Mr. Myers, that at nighttime there would be a truce, and each side would clear the battlefield, and you know, they would pull out their side's bodies, and you know, and I remember just being like, I want to go into this more, but the teacher moved on right away. Didn't want that conversation to go any further, because you go, wait. They did that by torchlight? Like, what do you mean? You mean the people that were shooting at each other earlier in the day, just hours earlier? They're now like, oh, hey, I saw you. I was going to shoot you, but I couldn't hit you. I'll get you tomorrow. Oh, no, you won't. I'll get you. Like, and they're just clearing the dead bodies out of the battlefield, running those pockets. And then of course, they're oh, this is Sergeant Billy Twiggers. We got to make sure that we get this letter not only to his wife, but then also she needs to send it back so we can keep it in the archives of history for forever, you know. (1860s). It's just so fucking silly, man. It really is fucking silly, and people just don't get it. You know, so many of you think about the Civil War as this absolute thing. So the Gettysburg, the Battle of Gettysburg is always one of my favorite, like, what the fuck kind of stories, right? Because the Battle of Gettysburg, we're told that around 30,000, a little over 30,000 troops died over a 3-day process. 30,000 people marched there, and most of them were lost. Huh? Most of the casualties were held on the South. You know, the South lost most of the casualties. So, considering the fact that 30,000 troops died, that means there had to be a significantly higher amount more that survived, right? But over the first day of fighting, there were around 20,000 casualties. And then, so what you have to accept is that on the first day, so all of these troops had to march their ass to Pennsylvania in the summertime. And remember, they're wearing like wool blues or wool grays. Like the Civil War uniforms are silly, but they're wool. Just like the baseball players. How did the baseball players of the early, late 18s, early 19s, how did they not die? I'm starting to think that it was a lot colder in the previous time, like before our grandparents. The early 19s, the 10s, the 20s, the 30s, and then prior to. Because if you look at any of the pictures, anything, literally any videos, any pictures, the oldest shit you can find, look at the paintings. You never see a painting of somebody like, oh, it's so hot, and he's got a bunch of sweat stains and all that shit. And you never see people in short pants and t-shirts or anything like that. People are always dressed in everything you ever see like it's fucking cold outside. And maybe some of you don't understand. Michigan has very similar weather to Pennsylvania. Oh, we're being rocked today. Look at this shit. But humidity, like humid hot, is a whole different thing. I've experienced what dry heat is in California and whatnot. And it's hot. But, days like today, days like it's been these last few days, it's let's see, shit. July 1st through July 3rd, 1863. So literally it couldn't be any hotter. I mean, I guess August is kind of hotter. I don't know. It just depends. But this is to think that there are hundreds of thousands. Let's see what it says. Let's see how many people it says. It was a 3-day battle in the American Civil War, which was fought between the Union and Confederate armies between July 1st and July 3rd, 1863, in and around Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. The battle, won by the Union, was widely considered the world Civil War's turning point, leading to an ultimate victory of the Union and preservation by the nation. The Battle of Gettysburg was the bloodiest battle of both Civil War and claiming over 50,000 combined casualties. So it's gone up. It's even worse than I thought. You realize, like, I every time I read one of these, I'm taking the risk of it being really straightforward and making me look stupid. Look at this cloud right here. Straight up, straight over. Perfect right angle. Gotta love the right angle clouds. But I come here and I do these readings where, good morning. Good to see you. I always love seeing you. Pardon? Yes. So 50,000 actually. So what I thought was ridiculous at 30,000 is even crazier at 50,000. And this is one of those things where, again, look at the comment section. All right. So do we have a whole bunch of Gettysburg enthusiasts on the feed as well? Submarine and Gettysburg enthusiasts who are going to be mad at me for reading the Gettysburg history and pulling it apart? Is that really how that works? I love how we went from 120 something down to 20 something in a matter of 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Must be something I'm doing. Doing the exact same thing prior to that led up to 120 viewers, but then I just, kept doing it and people were like, Union Major General George Meade's Army of the Potomac defeated attacks by Confederate General Robert E. Lee's Army of Northern Virginia, halting Lee's invasion of the North and forcing his retreat. 1863, we absolutely had cameras. And there are pictures of people sitting there. And when you say shit like, oh, well, it was an exposure thing, it wasn't. A great example of how they could film things, they could take pictures in real time is anytime you see water, right? Because waves are ripples that are constantly shifting and moving. So to see any sort of picture that has, a sharp picture of water shows you that was an instantaneous image. I mean, the idea of pictures taking a long time, why would they take a long time? We're dealing with light and like, I don't even know how cameras work, to be honest with you. The whole thing's really confusing to me, but it's not like somebody's in there like Flintstone style drawing out the thing, The image is instantaneous. We're just told that it took a long time to take pictures, which is, so that's why there aren't pictures of shit like the Civil War. It's just covering bases. It's not true. It's stupid. Why would it be true? And again, just because you can go read something that tells you it's true, does it make sense? How do you take pictures of water and waves if the camera isn't working instantaneously? And they absolutely had cameras back then, but this is what we have instead of these paintings. because that all makes sense, right? This all makes sense. And to think so let's keep going. The strength, 900 or 93,500 to 104,256. They had anywhere between, on the Union side, 93,500 to 104,256. That's pretty fucking precise. That's a weird thing to, like, if you know it's that number, why are we saying there's a anywhere between? That's a very precise number. 360 artillery pieces and 36 cavalry regiments, as opposed to 65,000 to 75,000, possibly as many as 80,000, 270 artillery pieces, and 9,500 cavalry. That's not the same thing. 36 cavalry regiments versus 9,500 cavalry is different. Casualties and losses. On the north side, they had 23,049. And on the south, they had between 23,000 and 28,000. So there you go. So that shows you just how many dead bodies had to be dealt with. After his success in the Battle of Chancellorsville in Spotsylvania County, Virginia, in May 1863, Lee led his Confederate forces through Shenandoah Valley to begin the Gettysburg Campaign. I mean, I don't have a map handy where I can see, like, from Virginia to Pennsylvania. I mean, I've driven it, and it takes a few hours to drive from Virginia to Pennsylvania, going 70 miles an hour. Like, seriously, you guys aren't this stupid, are you? Are you really? Are you really this stupid that you fall for this and just think this all just makes perfect sense to you? Just think about how far, I'm assuming as many as 80,000. I don't know if they mean, I thought it was multiple forces from all over, but if you're saying this was just one army that had just gotten done with another campaign in May. So think about this. So they just fought this 80,000 people, had to get to this place to begin with. They fought a battle and won, the Battle of Chancellorsville in May. I would assume it would take them about a month to walk to fucking Pennsylvania from there. But they march, they walk over to Pennsylvania. What? How does that work? Do they get there just before the days that the battle? Or is it multiple days that you have 80,000 plus, as many as 80,000 soldiers? We'll say 65,000 just to be conservative. The lowest estimate, 65,000. You have 65,000 new soldiers because you already had your regiment that was there to begin with. I assume, I don't know. And just to think how all of this was coordinated, right? Right? Like they're how? How are they coordinating all of this? There's all the articles of war and all this shit, so there had to be declarations, and it's not like it was a surprise attack. I feel dumb now. I just thought about Palestine. I'm sitting here talking about this and not Palestine like I'm supposed to be. With Lee's army in high spirits, he intended to shift the focus of the summer campaign from war-ravaged northern Virginia in the hopes of penetrating as far as Harrisburg or Philadelphia, which he hoped would convince northern politicians to end the war. President Abraham Lincoln initially prodded Major General Joseph Hooker into pursuing Lee, then relieved him of command just 3 days before the Battle of Gettysburg commenced, replacing him with Meade. That makes sense. That sounds like a really good idea. 3 days before your battle, you put somebody else in charge. That's going to be good for soldier morale and everything like that, right? On July 1st, literally they fight in May. Let's see, when did this battle end? From April 3rd to May 6th. Where the Chancellorsville campaign, 133,868 present for duty equipped. Chancellorsville, 106,000 Army of the Potomac minus 6th Corps, 2nd Division, 2nd Corps. And the 2nd Fredericksburg Sale Church, 28,000 versus 60,298. I'm assuming the 133 is, yeah, that's the Northern Army. So the Northern Army had double the strength, if not, I don't know if we're adding 133,000 to 106,000 and then another 28,000. I'm not really sure how that works. But the South only had 60,298. Good Lord. The Chancellorsville campaign had 17,287 wounded, 1,606 killed, 9,762 wounded, 6,919 captured or missing. Chancellorsville, 12,145. That's 1,082 killed, 6,849 wounded, 5,214 captured or missing. The 2nd Fredericksburg Sale M Church, 4,700 exactly, 493 killed, 2,710 wounded, 1,497 captured or missing, and minor skirmishes, 442. I don't know what the number is, like casualties and losses combined, I guess that's what they're saying. 31 killed, 203 wounded, 208 captured or missing. On the south side, they had 12,764 casualties, 1,665 killed, 9,801 wounded, 2,118 missing. So we are including all of, so basically they had like 260 some thousand. They had 200,000 more troops than the South did, and the South still won somehow. And they fought for 6 days or whatever. Then they marched their happy asses. Can anybody look it up real quick? Look up the distance from Spotsylvania County, Virginia to Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Just see how far that is. I don't want to lose the page, so. I'd love to know how far that was. To march, what was it? As many as 80,000? If the Battle of Chancellorsville says that they had a strength of 60,298, I guess that was in the beginning of the battle. And then when you say all the ones that they're captured or missing, that adds 12,000. 13, 14. That adds almost 15,000 troops to it. So is that what they're saying? That's how the strength grew? Again, I'm so dumb, but nobody in these comments is actually acknowledging any of this shit. It's interesting how dumb I am, but it's not like you can sort of show it. You know, you can prove it. I'm literally reading what they want us to read. If it sounds dumb, it's on them. On July 1st, 1863, Lee's forces moved on Gettysburg in the hopes of destroying the Union Army. The two armies encountered each other, and the battle commenced. Low ridges in the northwest of Gettysburg were initially defended by a Union cavalry division under Brigadier General John Buford, soon reinforced by 2 corps of the Union infantry. 2 large Confederate corps assaulted them from the northwest and north, however, collapsing the hastily developed Union lines, leading them to retreat through the streets of Gettysburg to the hills just south of the city. On the second day of battle, July 2nd, the Union line was laid out in a defensive formation resembling a fishhook. In the late afternoon, Lee launched a heavy assault on the Union's left flank, leading to fierce fighting at Little Round Top, the Wheatfield Devil's Den, and the Peach Orchard. On the Union's right flank, Confederate demonstrations escalated into full-scale assaults on Culp's Hill and Cemetery Hill. Despite incurring significant losses, Union forces held their lines. On the third day of battle, July 3rd, fighting resumed on Culp's Hill, and cavalry brigades raged to the east and south of Gettysburg. Pickett's charge featured the main engagement, a Confederate infantry assault of approximately 12,000 Confederate troops, who attacked the center of the Union line at the Cemetery Ridge, which was repelled by Union rifle and artillery fire, leading to great Confederate losses. So, the thing is, the Confederacy didn't exist for this really long time. You know, the Civil War was about 4 years long. So, what factories and shit were set up to mass produce weaponry and artillery in the South back in the 1850s and 60s in preparation for this? They love to throw these numbers at us, but nobody, you don't break it down. Break the wall down. You know, you don't actually think about the logistics of what they're telling you and how ridiculous the whole thing is. These guys are fighting these crazy fights during the day, marching all over the place like it's no big deal. You know, at nighttime, they're clearing battlefields and whatnot. Which is, you know, by the end of the story, it gets pretty fucking weird. But let's keep going. Just think about this shit. Think about all the seamstresses that had to be producing all the different uniforms. Where are they getting all of this from? These people didn't have the technology we have. Sure, they were good at it, but they didn't have the tech we have. I would imagine producing more than one uniform per day would be a tall task. And you say, oh, they're just stitching together fabric. Okay, so where does the fabric come from? Who's the fabric producers? Who's producing all of this wool? While all the men are out fighting the fight, it's not like the slaves are just picking the cotton anyway, right? Or picking the wool or picking the whatever. So how is the manufacturing of the goods still working out? I challenge any of you to build a submarine and film yourself. I want to see you do it. You should be able to. I mean, shit. We've been able to do it for such a long time. Since 1620, you would think, you know, how to do it would be pretty readily available to anybody that wanted to. Break the wall down. Good. I am proud of her. She literally did the least amount of work possible and still made it work out.
Well,
You should just wait.
it sounds kind of promising.
For somebody who's ambitious and works hard,
It's something she's passionate about, so maybe she will.
mm-hmm,
I don't know.
for sure, for sure.
When I took her to go do the wedding, the teacher's wedding, she was 12. She worked her fucking ass off. Like, she was a workhorse, so...
All right, well,
And now to see her...
when I saw her at the funeral
Right.
or anything else, she doesn't do shit. When I saw her at the graduation party, she didn't do shit.
I mean, I'm
And when she did, she stood there like the
I'm hoping it was because of her grief, but I don't know.
whatever.
We'll see.
We'll see. Like, this is the shit where, like, this is the stuff that's so concerning to me. And it's funny because it's like the boring stuff. You know, they want to distract you with this exciting stories of battle and bloodshed and you know, romance. He wrote out the love letter to his girl as he was dying. And, you know, and historical context and black versus white and, you know, sympathizers versus whatever non-sympathizers call themselves. You know, you get all of this really exciting distraction, like it always is. I mean, you could do the same thing with World War II. You know, Hitler's entire air force would have been dismantled if this one U.S. company stopped shipping this special grease that they were the only ones that produced it. But it went around these ball bearings that made their Air Force work. If this supply line was shut down, then they would have never had an Air Force to begin with. Like, it's just little shit like that where the majority of you just don't know it. And, you know, I guess, you know, it's one thing to not know it and like admit it and learn. It's another thing to arrogantly come in here and pretend like you're a fucking scholar of some sort. And you know, you know it's all true 100%. Right? Like it's really interesting when you think about what's being presented. The fact that, again, the same people that are here and get mad at me when I'm talking, like when I talk about killing pedos and eliminating the J cult that controls the world, therefore stopping the genocide and the pedophilia at the same time, or at least limiting the pedophilia, that's for sure. You know, when I'm talking about those things, these same guys are here and they're mad at me. When I'm talking about Trump and Epstein, these same guys are here and they're mad at me. Now we're talking about or earlier talking about the date and why we live in 2025 AD, which I can't seem to continue the conversation because there's always, you know, there's always shit in blue. And the stuff that's in blue is more information. So you're reading one thing and you're like, wait, this is a previous thing? Wait, let me check out what this is. And then you find out this, and this is by this guy. Like it just goes into this direction. But even still, no matter what I'm talking about, these guys are so mad. And they want my attention so bad. They're mad and bad and it makes them sad. I'm glad, you know. I might just be a fad, but it's one to be had. Come on, Brad. Anyway, Confederate troops who attacked the center of the Union line at Cemetery Ridge, which was repelled by Union rifle fire and artillery fire, leading to great Confederate losses. The following day, on the 4th of July, Lee led his Confederate troops on a torturous retreat from the north. Between 46,000 and 51,000 soldiers from both armies were casualties in the three-day Battle of Gettysburg, the most in any battle in the American history. So I wonder if they're going to talk about what they did afterward. Because I'm just going to read it. I'm going to read it and see if it says it. I'll be, you know. I know a narrative. I guess I should say the narrative beforehand. So from what I understand, again, when you think about like it's not something any of you can picture. But 20,000, 50,000, 50,000 dead bodies. Between 46,000 and 51,000. So we'll go with 46,000. 46,000 dead bodies is so many dead bodies. And we're talking about 1863, right? 1863, is that what it was? Yeah, 1863. So I would say we didn't have refrigeration, but we did, at least they did in Europe, because, you know, dry ice was first observed in the 1830s, so there had to be some sort of refrigeration, but we don't really talk about that. I can't personally find a history on refrigeration like that. How we were able to cool things down and shit. I'd love to read it. If somebody can point me in the right direction, I'd love to know. But we didn't have like refrigerated train cars and shit to be you know, shipping the bodies. Like, to think about the logistics of dealing with 46,000 dead bodies. Even the concept of, like, even today, if we could even do something today where we could identify each body, wrap it up nicely, and then ship it home, that would be a logistical nightmare at this point. But to think about it in 1863, at least what I think 1863 is supposed to be, what the paintings all show me, it's interesting. What can you say? It's interesting. But from what I understand, again, it's not like they can ship the bodies back home. It's like it's July, so I don't know if you guys are aware of what dead bodies. Have you ever been driving down the road and you noticed a fresh road, and over the next day or two, as you drive by it, it's still there, but it gets real big, like it swells up like a balloon, and then one day you'll drive by and it'll be just flat, and you'll assume somebody rode over it, and that's maybe the case, but what happens to dead bodies is they inflate in the heat, and then at some point the orifices give way and all of the innards just go leaking out all over the place. It's really disgusting. But there's that that period where the gases and shit all fill up in our body and we swell up, or bodies, just dead bodies, dead mammals, I should say. And so to think like it's fucking, it's July 4th in Pennsylvania. It had to be so hot and humid. What they say they did, this is what I remember, maybe it'll say differently now, is they buried all of the bodies in shallow graves, shallow marked graves. They marked all the graves apparently. And then a year later, they came back through, dug everything up, and then transferred it to Arlington. Again, the logistical undertaking that would require in the 1860s is beyond my level of understanding. I'll admit it, I'm fucking stupid, right? If anybody wants to explain to me how that was a thing in the 1860s, I'd love to hear it. On November 19th, Lincoln traveled to Gettysburg, where he spoke at the ceremony dedicating Gettysburg National. Honored the fallen soldiers and redefined the purpose of the Civil War in his framed Gettysburg Address, a 271-word speech that has endured as one of the most famous in American history. 271 words isn't a lot of words. Fourscore and 7 years ago, our forefathers brought on this continent. Oh, do we know what fourscore and 7 years ago is? That's a specific thing. Our forefathers, or our fathers, brought forth on this continent a new nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Funny. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are met with a great battlefield. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have to come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is, well, that's kind of weird, don't you think? Because apparently we did not forget it. It is for us, the living, rather to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to the cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from the earth. People spoke weird, didn't they? First day of battle. So this is, again, it's amazingly detailed for 1860. Anticipating that the Confederates would march on Gettysburg from the west on the morning of July 1st, Buford laid out his defense on 3 ridges west of the town: Hare Ridge, McPherson Ridge, and Seminary Ridge. These were appropriate terrain for a delaying action by a small cavalry division against superior Confederate infantry forces. Why? Like, to think that, that in a time of marching, the people who had the furthest to march would have the superior numbers is pretty weird. Goddamn family. Boy. Stop shutting off my light. Shit. Shut up. Alright, let's try this again. There it is. Alright. Confederate infantry forces meant to buy time awaiting the arrival of Union infantrymen who could occupy the strong defensive positions south of the town at Cemetery Hill, Cemetery Ridge, and Culp's Hill. Buford understood that if the Confederates could gain control of these heights, Meade's army would have difficulty dislodging them. Belch. Heath's division advanced with 2 brigades forward, commanded by Brigadier Generals James J. Archer and Joseph R. Davis. They proceeded easterly in columns along the Chambersburg Pike, 3 miles west of town, about 7:30 a.m. The 2 brigades met light resistance from vendettas of Union cavalry and deployed into the line. Because, the best strategy back then was to form a long line of shoot me. And just whoever survived, it was your job to kill all those who killed the people that you liked, who killed your side. I don't about all this. All right, let's see. Aftermath. A Harvest of Death, a photo of dead Union soldiers on the Gettysburg battlefield, which was taken by Timothy H. O'Sullivan on either July 5th or July 6th, 1863. You ready for this? Cover your eyes. This could get graphic. Oh, that's so silly. Oh, that's just so silly. At least somebody kept the lawn cut. Literally, like, there's no wounds. The guy in front seemingly has a little bit of blood on his face. But, like, even, like, look at... Oh, I can't sit here. Oh, this is happening. Look at the 2 guys in the background. They're positioned the exact same way. It's they're literally their heads, their arms, their leg, the leg that's up is a little bit like it's the exact same thing. And apparently it's the same for the people in the background too. God's mad, damn. Everybody's been turned over facing up in these pictures. Somebody was like, let's turn them all over and then take a picture. Let's see if I'm right, if it's still the same narrative. John L. Burns, a War of 1812 veteran who fought with the Union Army during the Battle of Gettysburg as a civilian. I mean, just think about that. Like, look at that outfit, right? Who's cleaning that outfit? What? Like, you know, that shirt is all white. How does your shirt stay white? It's 2025, and if I wear white, that shit's gonna be dirty in a minute. Like, we just don't think about the small details of things like that. And ask questions. Because, one, you don't want to be made fun of, right? Like, most importantly, you don't want to be made fun of. You see what happens to people like me. People don't address what you're saying. People don't engage the argument and prove you wrong. For some reason, when you don't believe what everybody else believes, it really makes everyone mad. And you know, they attack you. And in a lot of cases, it's the only times they're allowed to attack you. Like, you're allowed to attack people if they don't believe in Jesus. You're allowed to attack people if they don't think the earth is round. You're allowed to attack people if they question the reality that most people accept. Let's see. Morning, man. Good. You? The two armies suffered between 46,000 and 51,000 casualties. Union casualties were 23,055, but by casualties they mean 3,155 killed. So that's much less people than you know you would think when you hear it initially. When somebody says that there was casualties, I don't think of like, oh, somebody got hurt. 14,531 wounded, 5,369 captured or missing. That's a lot. While Confederate casualties are a bit more difficult to estimate. Many authors have referred to as many as 28,000 Confederate casualties. And Busey and Martin's more recent 2005 work, Regimental Strengths and Losses at Gettysburg, documents 23,231 casualties, 4,708 killed. That's not very many. That changes things. 12,693 wounded, 5,830 captured or missing. So basically we're talking about 8,000 dead bodies. So it's not 50,000 anymore. It's only 8,000. 8,000 dead bodies is still a lot of dead bodies to have to deal with. In July heat, you know, in the humidity of Pennsylvania. But it's more manageable. I'll give it that. It's a lot more manageable. Nearly a third of Lee's general officers were killed, wounded, or captured. The casualties for both sides of the 6-week campaign, according to Sears, were 57,225. What's up, Dookie?
Oh,
How'd you sleep? Good. Ugh. In addition to being the deadliest battle of the war, Gettysburg also had the most generals killed in action. Don't care. Union generals were killed, don't care. The following tables count. Don't care. All right. Let's see. Bruce Cannon wrote, the town of Gettysburg looked as if some universal moving day had been interrupted by catastrophe. But there was only one documented civilian death during the battle. That's amazing. It's amazing. Ginny Wade, also widely known as Jeannie, 20 years old, was hit by a stray bullet that passed through her kitchen in a town while she was making bread. Another notable civilian casualty was John L. Burns. That's the guy from the picture, a 69-year-old veteran of the War of 1812 who walked to the front lines on the first day of the battle and participated in heavy combat as a volunteer, receiving numerous wounds in the process. What's up, Matt? How you doing, dude? I'm talking about the exciting stuff right now. Right? Battles. My normal, boring, logistical conversation is being interrupted by battle details. I hope you are doing something cool. Though aged and injured, Burns survived the battle and lived until 1872. Wow. So is it that bullets back then weren't very effective? Like getting shot wasn't that bad back then? Or like their medicine was just really, really good and they were able to do it. I was watching this random video, top 20 times or 10 times, whatever it was, that rappers got heated at an interviewer. Got mad at the person doing the interview. And there's some, typical dumbass little doopy or boopy schmoopy, whatever the fuck his name is. I don't know. But apparently he got shot like 7 times. And he was mad at the podcaster for putting the hospital information out online. And he was like, dude, you could have got me killed. They could have came up in the hospital and tried to kill me, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, this shit's real. And he pulls up his shirt and he's got this huge scar down his chest, and where they had to break open his shit, and he's got all these different marks on him. And it makes me think about your buddy Tupac or 50 Cent. No, that's not a dimple in his cheek. He got shot in the face. 50 supposedly got shot a bunch of times. According to his people, he disappeared up into the mountains for a couple of months, and when he came back, he was all swole. And he had a rap album and shit. You've seen 50 Cent without his shirt on. Where did he get shot? Tupac supposedly got shot all those times, like 6 times or whatever. The time he survived, remember? Remember Tupacalypse? Remember Lassane Parish? When Lassane Parish, little fruity ass Lassane Parish, got shot, supposedly, and then left the hospital because he was scared, and his head was wrapped in a fucking bandage. And he was like, I'm scared to be at the hospital. I'm getting out of here. Because he had just gotten shot 6 times the day before. You guys remember that shit? That's not what happens when you get shot. Especially multiple times. You have to be in the hospital for a long time There's multiple surgeries that have to happen. They do what they can to stabilize you, and then they're going to have to go back in at other points to fix things. And you run the risk of sepsis and all these other crazy, like getting shot is no cool thing in any way, shape, or form. Speaking of getting shot, where are all the videos, the cell phone videos and live feeds from Trump supposedly getting shot? I highly suggest you guys look up this YouTube video where, so it's clearly like some military guys, and they're making fun of truthers, and they're like, all those truthers out there that talk about Trump, his head would have been blown off. There's no way his whole head would have been blown off. His head would have. They keep sticking to that. Like anybody, like people are making the argument that his head would have been blown off, and I'm sure there's lots of people making that argument. And the trajectory that they say that everything happened. So you have to, first of all, you have to ignore Red Shirt Joseph, who was a guy who was interviewed like right off the bat. He had on a red shirt. He said his name was Joseph and he didn't want to give his last name. And he said without a doubt, he was watching it from his perspective. He could see the shots came from Trump's back and to the left, back and to the left. And that's why the guy that got killed was all the way off to Trump's left, because the shots came from Trump's left and behind him. And the guy said that he saw the person that died. He saw when he got shot. He saw that he got shot and the blood spray flew out in the direction. And like he said, he knew, he said he was familiar with that, with military stuff. He wouldn't, again, he was real cryptic, but he said, I know what I'm looking at. He absolutely no doubt got shot. The guy that got killed was in between the shooter and Trump. Which is really crazy, because this like nobody talks about that guy. I don't know about that guy being interviewed. I don't know about anything else that happened involving that guy since then. All I know is that he was, for some reason, he was considered enough of an authority to be interviewed, and he painted a completely different picture than what we're told. And what we're told doesn't even really make sense. If what we're told was true, how come nobody behind Trump got shot? Like in the stands? How come none of his stands got shot? But there's the video of, and again, there's no cell phone videos. No cell phone videos and no live feeds showing Trump getting shot. Which, according to the stupid NCIS TV shows my wife watches on the Ion network every fucking day, back in the the late aughts, the early teens, they were capable of using social media. They said that any event that happens in public, there are so many people filming and taking pictures at any given time, especially if it's in like a densely public setting, that based on all the pictures that get uploaded at that time from that place, they can basically create a 3D model of the area at any point, any time. And when you're talking about something like the Republican National Convention, or that's what it was, where Trump is speaking, and according to him, there's tens of thousands of people there, there's thousands of people there. You can see it in the video of him that there are people behind him with their cell phones out. You can go look at any fucking live feed, any live event anywhere, anytime, and you're gonna see a sea of cell phones. There's always gonna be cell phones. So where are all the cell phone videos showing a clear-cut 3D diorama? You know, it should be, from the cameras that were behind him too, we should have a completely 360, video of the exact shoot, of everything that went down. There would have been hundreds, if not thousands of people recording. People walk around with 2 cell phones nowadays. And just like the Pulse nightclub shooting, just like any of the fucking shootings they try to pull off, nobody's ever filming. For some strange reason, in today's society, nobody is filming it. And those things, those other things are more random. This is the Republican National Convention bullshit. There should have been, YouTube should be full of cell phone videos showing every single angle of the Trump shooting. And there's none. Well, there's a couple. There's like there's one that was supposedly like at Trump's 7:30 or so, Trump's facing this way, like behind him this way and up behind him, that supposedly shows the shooter's head across the way. And you can see his head, and then there's an awning, and he goes behind it, and then he comes out on the other side. And then apparently right after he comes out on the other side, he starts shooting, but the footage stops. And of course, like Trump pointed out, how loyal his supporters are, that they were just so concerned about him that nobody ran. That's not how it works. Somebody gets shot right in front of you. You don't just stand there and be like, whoa, look at that. If you don't know where the bullets are coming from, you just hide. You run and you hide. People should have been scattering like fucking roaches. They didn't know if any more shots were coming. They didn't know if there was more than one shooter. They didn't know if a bomb was going to blow up. They didn't know anything. All they know is apparently Trump just got shot right in front of them. And they're just sitting there watching, nobody fled, nobody nothing. And nobody behind him got hit by anything. To me, the lack of cell phone videos is the biggest smoking gun of all of it. I just don't understand how that's even possible. But there's a video of these military guys who decide that conspiracy theorists are crazy. Why is everybody saying Trump's ear would have been blown off? Why is everybody saying that what we saw was a blade job from the WWE? Because that's what it looked like to me, a WWE blade job. He fell down, nicked his ear, came up. The blood had basically stopped. Like, he wasn't like gushing blood. A little stripe on his face. And then he was allowed to stand up, and he just happened to have female Secret Service agents for some fucked up reason who are shorter than him. So on either side of him, there's a tall man, but then there's a small woman right in front of him, so it like frames him. And he's allowed to walk and be like, fight, fight. They don't know if another shooter's gonna come. They don't know if there's any, they just pick him up and he's fight, and they push him and they get him in the car. And my favorite part of the whole thing is the second fat little female Secret Service agent who has her gun out, and she's standing there and she goes to put it away and she can't get it in the holster. She tries like 2 or 3 times, and she goes, and the feed stops. Oh, that's just so funny. She's Secret Service, huh? First of all, that you would have female Secret Service to begin with. Why would anybody have female Secret Service agents? That's fucking stupid. But to have female Secret Service agents in that position, and then doesn't know how to put the gun in the holster, that's just hilarious to me. Hilarious to me. But these guys made the video, right? And I assume they're like soldiers and they have permission because they have high-powered weaponry, and I think they have access to the exact gun that was supposedly used. And they measure it out to the exact foot that he was away, the exact distance. And they have one of those Like, you ever seen that show where you make where they have the competition to make the knives, different weapons and shit? God, I can't. The edge, the blade, something like that. I don't remember what it's called. It's a cool show. But anytime they do like ballistics testing or weapon, they make, what is essentially a fake human body. They figured out using like silicone and jellies and fake this and fake that. They can basically make a cadaver that responds the same way a human responds, a human body responds to things. And so they have this fake Trump head made. And remember, they say that the shooter was at Trump's like 1 o'clock, 1:30. Trump turned his head like this to look down at somebody, and that's when he did like that. If the shooter is here, you guys are here, the shooter's over here, and I turn my head like this to look, the bullet can't hit my ear. It's going to go through my head. But again, we don't want to talk about that. But they show the guy makes the shot. The first shot he makes, it hits the bottom of the ear. And it's considered a miss because Trump got hit here up towards the top. But they're like, look, his head's still attached. And they're all like, high-fiving and shit. Like, see, his head's still attached. And they show the ultra slow-mo video, and it's still bad. It's still way worse than what we saw. But that's nothing. Because the second attempt, they shoot and they hit this part of the ear. And in the ultra slow-mo, you can see how the impact reverberations just go right through his face. You can see his whole face wiggles, but the ear just explodes. It explodes. And one of the guys is like, yeah, see, that just looks like, that's the same as somebody just kind of smacking you on the head like that. That's the same kind of impact that is. And they're like, they have much less confidence in the sound of their voice. And they're like, yeah, but see, the head's still on. And they're like, yeah, head's still on. No more high fives and shit. And the one guy says, I am surprised to see just how much, I forget the word he uses, but describing how much the ear distorts. I think he says distortion. How much distortion there is in the ear. And then it cuts. They cut off what he's saying. And then it goes to the next part. But he's acknowledging, after looking at the super slow-mo, he was acknowledging holy shit, that's not what we saw. Just nicking his fucking ear right here made his whole shit explode. His ear would have just been just wrecked. And the plastic surgery that supposedly, I guess, he had that looks like nothing ever happened wouldn't have been able to happen. But look that video up. It's why I only use I don't only, but I usually use Wikipedia. I want to use the sources they want me to use, they want me to see. And so oftentimes, when you look at the PBS documentary, when I think it was 10 years after 9/11, maybe it was 5 years after 9/11. I think it's 5 years now. I don't know. 6 years, something like that. Where they finally, the NIST report came out. And so PBS made a documentary about it. And this thing was this shit was getting advertised all over. This was going to be a big deal. This was going to be the first, true government explanation about what happened on 9/11, yada, yada, yada. And the the PBS documentary, I think it was in 2006. It shows their Atari like computer diagram because for some reason every time the government wants us to see something, they don't have the capability of creating any sort of realist. It's always like Atari graphics for some reason. We're still using Atari graphics. Go look at anything they show you that has to do with the Hadron Collider. All the demonstrations they show are like little dots, and the dots will hit each other, and then boop 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 boop. Like it's so goofy. It's just so goofy. That's the best we can come up with, huh? That's what the billions and billions go for again, huh? But you know, I don't remember what I was saying. But if you watch the 9/11 documentaries, like they shouldn't exist, right? There shouldn't be the ability to question things so obviously, and then there's no answers to it. You're just supposed to leave it. 9/11 was such bullshit, and they use that to justify so much more. I know I brought up 9/11 because I was using it as an example for something else. I can't remember what I was talking about. The Indian spacecraft looked like that Atari. It's actually less realistic than a video game, right? It's so fucking, it's so like silly. It's silly that you would think, why would they? The trade towers, WTC7, and the trade, those are the distraction. The real story is the Pentagon. And that's why there's so much focus on the towers. That's why there's so much focus on Tower 7 and, oh, the building that fell without getting hit. And everybody look here, look here, look. You know, we have the architects and engineers, the thousands of architects and engineers, the 9/11 truth movement. The whole thing is all about the trade towers. And very, very little goes into the Pentagon, of which Donald Rumsfeld the night before had acknowledged that the Pentagon, the government, had lost $2.3 trillion. They couldn't find it. They didn't know where it was. And it just so happens that the very next day, 9/11, the one part of the Pentagon that just happened to be the one part that was recently reinforced was the part that the plane went into, destroying all of the records for that $2.3 trillion thing, because that just happened to be the location where the investigation for that $2.3 trillion was happening. So they just lost it. And you had Rumsfeld running around destroying a crime scene, picking up pieces of debris and carrying them off. Donald fucking Rumsfeld, the Secretary General or whatever the fuck he was. Like this man is not out there getting his hands dirty, and he's out there destroying a crime scene. And I mean, there's literally no, like as wonky and as bullshit and as obviously stupid as the tower narratives are, the Pentagon narrative is 100 times worse. You know, it's on video. You're supposed to believe that a giant 747, whatever the 757, whatever the fuck the big ass plane was, had this huge wingspan, this huge tail section, all this shit, somehow collapsed in on itself into a hole that could barely fit the front of the fuselage. and penetrated through multiple layers of the Pentagon, the reinforced Pentagon, the ultimate G.I. Joe base, which has anti-air defenses and gun posts and missiles and shit hidden underneath. Absolutely, the number one military base in the United States has defense capabilities. But somehow this thing formed this small hole, blew through multiple sections of the Pentagon, and left zero evidence of a plane. Everything plane related evaporated. No planes hit anything on 9/11. I'm a no-planer. I'm sorry. I've seen the footage we're supposed to see that multiple TV stations had at the same time that showed the nose of the plane pass through the fucking building unscathed. It cuts to black for like 15 frames, which is only like a second, and then comes back to the explosion. All three cameras had that same malfunction, huh? All three major news networks happen to have the same malfunction. The Pentagon is the main story. You've just been distracted. I don't remember what I was talking about that led me to 9/11. Still feeding your kid canned food every day. That makes sense. That's a reasonable argument. I don't know why I wasn't talking about that more. It's all so fucking crazy. And at the end of the day, like, what can I do? I'm clearly not allowed to reach the heights I want to reach, but even if I did, that would just lead to turmoil. People want to believe what they believe. They don't believe it for any good reason. Literally, not one of you Christians out there can give a reasonable reason why you're a Christian. Or did the fucking comments get shut off again? I think they did. The last comment I can see is Manchurian Candidate. Oh, no, there's one. Cool. You aren't reaching any heights. You aren't smoking. Yes. Gotcha. Just gotcha. It's so funny to me how people watching me will be like, no one's watching you. Okay. At one point, this video had over 120 viewers. And then something happened. I asked you guys to like, share, and sub. That's usually my downfall. When I ask y'all to like, share, and sub. And 5 minutes later, we're knocked down to 20. I don't know what you think censorship is supposed to look like. Like, censorship isn't going to be thousands of viewers. Censorship is going to be, should be hundreds, thousands of viewers, but weird shit is happening that prevents that from happening. Everyone is so creative. You know, I keep trying to have this I don't know meaning conversation, but it's just so, it's so interesting. talking about this. We're back. I'm doing the Battle of Gettysburg here, and we just talked about Burns. Yeah. Nearly 8,000 had been killed outright. These bodies, lying in the hot summer sun, needed to be buried quickly. More than 3,000 horse carcasses were burned in a series of piles south of town. Townsfolk became violently ill from the stench. They burned 3,000 horses. Meanwhile, the town of Gettysburg, with its population of just 2,400, found itself tasked with taking care of 14,000 wounded Union troops and an additional 8,000 Confederate prisoners. Yeah, you can say that, but how? How did they just accommodate that? Do you guys not see like how ridiculous that is? It's just fucking silly, right? Yeah, the town of 1400 was then tasked with dealing with 22,000 new people. They had to accommodate for 22,000 fucked up people. Wounded people, missing limbs and shit. Kids, a bunch of kids. Cracked, fucking, can you imagine how their heads were cracked? They are shell shocked. And the thing is, that's the end of that part. They just say, well, they were tasked with taking care of 14,000 wounded troops and an additional 8,000 Confederate prisoners. And you're going to find all sorts of goofy details one way or another. Here you go. Confederates lost over 31 to 55 battle flags, with the Union possibly having lost slightly fewer than 40. Confederate battle flags were sent to Washington. You're giving me details about the flags? Somebody kept track of the flags that were lost? Are we fucking serious here? What happened to the people after the 22,000 people? The 14,000, well, the 14,000 wounded, and then the 8,000 prisoners, and then you would think there would have to be a several thousand, able-bodied soldiers to accommodate the 8,000 prisoners. Like, where do you keep these people? Where are all these people staying? Are there just makeshift tents set up everywhere? Is that what we're saying? People are fighting over hotel rooms that this little town of 1,400 people didn't have? What food surpluses were coming in to accommodate that many people? I mean, whatever reserves they had would have been just wiped out immediately. So where is all the support coming from? And even still, like, how would it's not like you have refrigeration. So if you were going to slaughter a bunch of cows and send that meat there, how would you even do that? Are we saying it was by train that they would do that, and then they had what, big giant freezers in the 1,400 town? Do you guys realize how crazy this shit is? I disagree. The Epstein files are the distraction so we don't talk about Palestine. And I agree. Talking about anything else is fucking stupid. And really, even Palestine is a distraction, because the thing we should be talking about is how do we eliminate the J cult that pulls the strings and has us all slaves, that supplies us with this information, that's committing the genocide, that created the Epstein. that was Maxwell 2.0, that is facilitating Maxwell's comfortable existence. I don't believe Maxwell has been in prison. I think they just stage things to make it look like she is. Maxwell's the handler. Epstein is just the face. Just like Melania is Trump's handler. If you know how that relationship works behind the scenes, you understand. It's not a loving relationship. She's his boss. He apologizes to her and shit. She chews him out. Right? She's clearly working for Israel. But yeah, we're not supposed to talk about those things, right? Do you believe in Agatha? I don't care. I when it comes to historical shit, I think that's what you're talking about, right? And that's a historical nerd. Like, I'm fascinated by it, but at the end of the day, we can't know. We can't know the truth. The only way we ever know the truth about any of it, the Tartaria, any of that shit, is if we unify, the Goyim unify, and overthrow the Jays that control the narrative. Otherwise, we're just arguing over the crumbs they feed us. This guy doesn't understand anything. Just like the French president and his husband. I don't know what the fuck that means. I fully support gay everything, so don't know what you're talking about. Do you live with the president and his wife? What's your proof? Where's your proof? Where's your proof? Look it up. The thing is, I've looked into all of it. And unlike you guys who have like my videos saved and different timestamps and shit so you can cry about each time I hurt your feelings, I don't have the exact thing saved, but just look up Melania Trump. Look up the Wikipedia about Melania Trump. Look up what was said when the pussy grabbing video got leaked. He came home, she said, you know, you might have screwed this up for us. And he was like, sorry. And she turned around and walked away. She yelled at him, he apologized, and she walked away. Where's your proof? Have you seen Melania? Especially 20, what was he, 20, I think she was 28. 28-year-old Melania? What would 28-year-old Melania want with 52-year-old Donald Trump? He's disgusting. He's fucking disgusting. And he's got a horrible reputation. She's already successful beyond what she should have been. And she was gorgeous. She could have had her pick of anyone. She didn't need to be going with Donald Trump. He wasn't even that guy back then. And what happens? They get together and she starts posing nude all over the place. Like, while he's running for president the first time. You guys forget that he ran in like 2000 and lost. But while he's running for president, she's out fucking posing nude in different magazines. It's crazy. It's crazy. But their relationship makes no sense. I've never seen anything between them that even begins to resemble love. You know, you can tell the Obamas dug each other. The Clintons, completely different story. You know, you can tell that she was a beard manufactured to play the role. But when it comes to Melania Trump, she clearly doesn't like that guy. Smacks his hand away and shit. But she's the handler. She's the boss. Her narrative is fake as shit. And one of the ways you can tell is because they say things like, she was this loner who never went out and did anything, so like nobody remembers her. Right? She was quiet. She never spoke up in the classroom, though she's supposedly this fantastic political strategist and shit, apparently. Like, her narrative just doesn't make sense. And except when you look at it like she was introduced to Donald. Like it was an operation. She was there to do the job. The whole thing just doesn't make any sense. Ask her what the hell she found attractive about that, man. That's a legitimate question. You can say it's shallow or you can say it's whatever you want, but I need to understand what would make a really successful 28-year-old model not find some prince, some young hot prince who has wealth beyond Trump's imagination. You know, not some famous musician or rock star or actor or successful tycoon of some sort. Nothing like that. She wants douchebag Donald Trump back in 1997? Although supposedly he picked her out when she was like 15 at one of the at some model show, but that part seems to be scrubbed, so it's hard to talk about. But seriously, somebody explain it to me. A woman, please explain to me what could possibly be attractive about Donald Trump at any point. Like, other than money, which so many people have money. And so what is it? It's not like he has this award-winning personality. This dude was best buddies with Epstein. Like, these are shady fucking characters. Let's see. Bot chats to keep the comment section moving so you won't see our opinion and information. Exactly. Yeah, it's Team Jorge. It's what they do. Honeypot, yep. The job she was instructed to carry out. Exactly. She did what she's told to do, and she does it. And she is absolutely in control. She is the link. That's why she's not a part of things. This is a chick who was a model, who posed nude. You know, this is a chick who doesn't like who doesn't hate attention. Like she loves attention. You know, something happened. Nobody talks about it, but something happened. I don't remember what year it was. 17, 18, something like that. Where she supposedly went in for a routine biopsy of a cyst on a kidney, and she wasn't seen for months. Months. And then they tried to be like, oh, she's just been in the White House. Like, people started, there was a Where's Melania campaign going on for a minute there. We're just used to it now. But nobody had seen her. And after a couple of months, it was like, oh yeah, she was in the White House the whole time. You guys just didn't see her, yeah. And the first introduction to this new Melania, and this is shortly after she wore the coat that she painted on. I don't really care, do you? But the first time we see her is, the first time she makes a public appearance in months is at an all-military function where no press are allowed to be. And it's all military. It's all people who are sworn to uphold the narrative. And she's there, and you can see her waving. Like, it looks like the Prince Harry and what's her name? Meghan? That famous, like, set of animatronic fucking fake people that at the crowd of a hockey game or some shit like that. I don't know. It looks like that. She's just sort of she doesn't speak. She doesn't do anything. She just waves and smiles. And then it's another few weeks before she's at another event where the first time you see her again, and this time she's speaking, but everybody's kept away. And it's just this small speaking role. And then she's gone again. Where's gone again? He's gone again. This is the First Lady of the United States. This is essentially one of the most powerful women in the world. She could be doing all kinds of great things. She could be the next Michelle Obama, because Michelle Obama really did a lot with her presidency. Even Joe Biden did a lot. You know, she was associated with all sorts of different things, whether it's, you know, whatever. But Melania is not there. She's behind the scenes. She's pulling strings. That's what she does. Look at how goofy these guys are. Like, can you imagine what I'm saying has people so upset that they can't make any reasonable arguments? They just start like, wah, wah. Like, that's basically what they're doing. Anybody at this point, if you're a Trump supporter, to me, you're a pedophile. That's the only people that I can assume support Trump to this day. Everything he's associated with, you know, all of the horrible shit he said. Howard Stern show where he's bragging about how at 60 he could easily bang 24-year-olds if he wasn't married. He could easily do it. No problem, no problem. Robin says, well, what do you have a limit? And he says, no. An age limit? And he says, no. Well, I mean, you know, I wouldn't want to be caught fooling around with a 12-year-old like, what's his name? That's not the response you give. That's not a normal person's response. You see that girl? In 10 years, I'll be dating her. That dude is fucking, he is so blatant. Like, the thing about those guys, like your average pedo that I promise you, you have multiple pedos within houses of you. But those people are used to living in the shadows. Guys like Trump have been so accommodated for such a long time that they sometimes forget how to be normal. You know? No fucking nobody looks at a little fucking 8-year-old, 10-year-old and says, oh, I'll be dating her in 10 years. As they're going up an escalator. Do you know how creepy that is? If anybody else did that, the police would be called. Like, that would be a fucking big no-no. I'm not normal. Normal has become supporting Trump in this country. I mean, again, I just don't think people realize how prevalent the pedo situation really is. I don't think you understand just how, like, I challenge any of you, look it up, look up your neighborhood. Look up the registry in your neighborhood alone, and you'd be shocked by how many dots there are. That's just the people that got caught, man. That's just the sloppy ones, the unlucky ones. That's the people that had the compulsion that was overridden. They were so compelled to do it that they went and did something physical. That doesn't account for all the people that are consistently trading imagery, child exploitation materials. That is way more common. That shit is everywhere. Pictures and videos and just the nastiest, most disgusting, horrible things. This is one of the #1 industries in the world, online, is the buying and selling of that horrible shit. And that can only be that way because there are way more people doing it than people realize. And the best example you can get is just go look at ask any predator hunter. If you have a chance to talk to them, or if you happen to see one of their videos about, behind the scenes, just go look at old, To Catch a Predators, or even Chris Hansen to this day with Takedown. As soon as they post the young-looking photo with a name like, Skylar 2013 or Skylar 2012 or whatever, that shit just starts lighting up. Blink, 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 blink. Hey, what's up? Hey, what's up? You could post another profile of a 40-year-old lady, bunch of kids and shit. That might get hit up by some African spammer types. But it's not going to be blink, 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 blink like it would be the obvious child. And I say it all, if you don't have a teen in your name and you reach out to somebody with a teen, or in your age, and you reach out to somebody with a teen in their age, and let's be reasonably, if you're 21 and you're talking to a 19-year-old, that's one thing. If you're 21 and you're talking to a 13-year-old, that's not okay. And then it just gets worse as it gets, that range gets bigger. Nothing today?
No, nothing.
You started something.
I don't really have no mail. This is the mail for the whole block.
And you have to still walk it?
I know.
Why don't you just stop at the 3 houses you have to drop it off at instead of walking around, Goofy?
I don't know.
Come on now.
I really didn't look at it, so I'm sorry.
We'll start looking. Have a great day. But if you reach out to a kid, you only have nefarious intentions. There is no good reason for anybody to... Kids are stupid. Like if I didn't love my kids and they weren't my kids, I wouldn't want to talk to them. They're stupid. They got nothing to say. They're going to talk about some Blox Fruits or some bullshit. Even though I think Blox Fruits is old at this point. I'm just not. Like, you have no reason to talk to children at all. And every single one of these pedo hunters will tell you, like, every profile they make is not only immediately hit up, but is hit up consistently, like, in a very disturbing way. And very few of those guys will actually be compelled enough to make the journey. But those guys still have all kinds of shit in their search history and in folders and shit on their phones and on their computers that they would never want people to see. I would reset, but I don't care. I'll just end it here soon. It's those same people that will tell themselves, those are the people that can overlook what Trump is so obviously associated with and guilty of. I mean, again, if I found out my best friend was covering for a pedophile, I couldn't think like the way I think about pedophiles. I don't see how you can not think the way I think about pedophiles. So if you can not think the way I think, and you can think, oh, I'm going to help this person cover up for what they've done, or, not be held accountable, Like, we're just not on any sort of similar page. Oh, come on, 3 is ridiculous. So let's reset. Pedophiles, kill yourself.